Good evening and welcome to today's Zoning Board of Appeals virtual meeting. Per Executive Order 202.28 by the Governor of the State of New York, the town of Smithtown is required to continue hosting all public meetings, either in person, in which case we must prohibit physical public contact, while public meetings can be held remotely via conference call or similar services. Additionally, per the executive order, the town continues to live stream, record, and transcribe each meeting. As a reminder for any resident wishing to view today's meeting, you can do so by clicking on the Agendas and Meeting button on the homepage of the town's website at www.smithtownnewyork.gov. You are all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinance, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you're requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide this board with precise and accurate information so we can make a decision based on the facts that you present here tonight. This board must consider the 5 area variance considerations in order to render a decision, and they are as follows. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. Number 3, whether the variance, whether the requested area variance is substantial. 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the board, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. This is where I usually say cases will be called in the order they are advertised, but tonight we have one change. We have a case 1-18245, 779A Middle Country Road. That is going to be moved ahead of the Owl Hills Estate. Reason being, we believe the Owls Hill Estate is going to take some time. So once the Middle Country Road case is done, we'll be taking a 5-minute break before we start the Owl Hills case. Once your case is announced by Mr. Donadio, the moderator will connect you to the meeting so you can present your case to the board. After your case has been presented to the board, if anyone on the board has any questions, they will be asked. Any interested party who would like to speak on this case will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to any questions or concerns, after which the case will be closed. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. You can contact the planning board after 12 p.m. tomorrow for the status of your case. We do have one adjournment tonight. That is case 18484, Diverse Equity Solutions. That has been adjourned to April 13th. All right, Blaze.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda is case number 18468, William and Wendy DeGarry, 15 Riviera Drive, Smithtown. The location of the property, the north side of Riviera Drive, 142 feet west of Iris Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum front yard from 40 feet to 31 feet for a proposed 180 square foot front covered porch.
Can I have the applicant, please?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Could you state your name and the address for the record, please?
I'm Wendy DeGarry.
And I'm William DeGarry.
We're the homeowners.
Okay, fine. And your address, just for the record?
15 Riviera Drive, Smithtown.
All right, thank you. And you could tell us why you're here tonight, please?
Well, we'd like to extend a porch we already have. We'd just be bringing the porch out a little further to 180 square feet. It's not going any further than we're already coming out the front of the house. So we do not feel it would be a detriment to anybody.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
Chairman, I don't have anyone with their hand up. I will take a minute just to ask folks that if they do want to speak on an application, to either utilize the raise hand function or the chat function. Thank you.
Okay. All right, since there's no one in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application, can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we allowed to just sign out for the evening?
You're free to do whatever you'd like to do. If you
Well,
want to
we
stay
appreciate
here
that.
and listen, you can, or go on with your life.
Thank you. As riveting as it is, I think we have to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18475, Jane Friedman, 27 Ashley Circle, Comac. The location of the property, the south side of Ashley Circle, 350 feet south of Scarlet Drive. The property is zoned R6. The applicant is requesting a variance to permit a patio to extend more than 10 feet from the rear of a dwelling unit to 18 feet for a proposed 18-foot by 29-foot brick patio.
Good evening. Can I have the applicant, please?
Hi, I'm Jane Friedman at 27 Ashley Circle in Comac.
Good evening, Jane. Would you like to tell us why you're here tonight?
Yes, hi. I would like a variance and request for a permit for a patio of more than 10 feet from the rear of the dwelling unit to 18 feet for a proposed 18 by 28 and a half stone patio.
Is this the Tara complex?
It is.
It is? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Oh, thank you.
No question.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
No, Chairman.
No? All right. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18476, PJ Venture FG LLC for Floor and Decor, 4 Henry Street, Comac. The location of the property, the southwest corner of Henry Street and Garrett Place. The property is zoned SCB. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum height of a ground sign from 15 feet to 16 feet, increase the number of wall signs from a maximum of 1 to 5, to permit a wall sign not to face a public street.
Good evening. Could I have the applicant, please?
Yeah, Don King, 75 East Main Street, Kings Park, New York.
Good evening, Mr. King.
Boy. This is the former Target store. It's 90,000 square feet. They have a new user and they need these signs, and all the signs are compatible with the shopping center over there.
All right. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
All right. Planning, any questions?
Thank you.
No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
No, Chairman.
All right, thank you, Nicole. With that said, can I have a motion to close the application, please? Can I have a motion to close the application?
So moved. Sorry, I was muted.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18477, Matthew Landman, 10 Wayne Place, Comac. The location of the property, the south side of Wayne Place, 286 feet east of Rensselaer Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 39 feet for a proposed 416 square foot covered patio, to increase the maximum permitted paving in the rear yard from 25% to 27% for a proposed 940 square foot patio and pavers.
Can I have the applicant, please?
I believe it's Matthew Landon. Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Oh, hi. I'm Matthew Landman. This is my wife, Kim.
Hi, Kim Landon.
We live at 10 Wayne Place in Comac.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
And you were here tonight because?
Just trying to make our backyard a little more livable. We're doing an extension on our house. We'd like to do a 15 by 25 foot covered area because we have so much direct sun on our yard. We're also going to be putting a pool in, and with the paving we're doing between the patio and around the pool, it would be a bit above the maximum 25%. So we're just requesting variances for those two things.
Okay, and that's being done with pavers, not solid concrete.
Correct, paving.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone on the board that has any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
Thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience that likes to be heard on this application?
No, Chairman.
No. Thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
So much.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18480, Danielle and James Dinda, 2 Peppermint Road, Comac. The location of the property, the northwest corner of Peppermint Road and Marshmallow Drive. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum rear yard from 75 feet to 69 feet for a proposed 452 square foot roof over patio, to reduce the distance from any lot line in the required rear yard from 2 feet to 0 for an existing 96 square foot shed, to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 10 feet for an existing 1,218 square foot sports court.
May I have the applicant, please?
Hi, Danielle Dinda and James Dinda.
Hi. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Would you like to tell us why you're here tonight?
We are here basically to reduce the minimum rear yard from 75 feet to 69 feet for proposed 452 square foot roofed over patio. And then the other 2 things that we're looking to do were existing when we bought the house back in August, and that's to reduce the distance from any lot line in the required rear yard from 2 feet to 0 feet for an existing 96 square foot wood shed. And also a permit an existing accessory structure in the required rear yard, 1,218 square foot sports court, reducing the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 10 feet.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Donadio and I drove past your house yesterday, and as you can see from that drawing that's on the board right now, it's well buffered on Marshmallow Lane. You can't even see into your backyard.
No.
Very good. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
No, Chairman.
No. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
You too.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18481, Joseph Palazzolo, 86 Lillian Road, Nesconset, the location of the property, the west side of Lillian Road, 797 feet south of Eklund Boulevard. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the rear yard from 35 feet to 25 feet for a proposed 294 square foot first floor rear addition, adding to a lawful non-conforming structure.
Could I have the applicant, please?
I believe that's Gennaro Cozzolino. You're on.
Yes, I thought you had to call the homeowner on first.
Yeah, we do. I've asked for the applicant.
The homeowner, please.
Okay.
I need
If
their
they-
permission.
If they are on.
Sorry, hi. I was on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Good evening. This is Joseph Palazzolo at 86 Lillian Road, Nesconset.
Okay. Would you like this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
Yes, I'm going to have my representative speak on my behalf, Mr. Cozzolino.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, could you introduce yourself, spell your last name, and give your address, please, for the record?
Gennaro Cozzolino, last name Cozzolino, 2125 Deer Park Avenue, Deer Park, New York, 11729.
Thank you.
We're requesting relief from the board to construct a new 17 by 15 first floor rear addition. The proposed addition requires a variance for rear yard setback, requesting permission to reduce rear yard from 35 feet to 25 feet, a difference of 10 feet. This is not a substantial variance request. We are staying in line with the existing rear of the house, and we will not encroach any further than the existing setback of 25 feet. The proposed addition will comply with all other zoning requirements. We will have no significant impact to the environment, will not affect any of the adjacent properties, and will fit in with the character and nature of the neighborhood.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Oh, thank you.
No question.
No. Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard in this application?
No, Chairman.
No. Could I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18482, Jacqueline Shore, 6 Evers Court, Comac. The location of the property, the south side of Evers Court, 186 feet west of Ruth Boulevard. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 47 feet, which is existing at 31 feet, to reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 9 feet, which is existing, reduce the total side yards from 28 feet to 20 feet, existing, increase the maximum floor area ratio from 30% to 40% for a proposed 1,695 square foot second floor addition, adding to a lawful non-conforming structure, reducing the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 0, and reducing total side yards from 28 feet to 9 feet for an existing 64 square foot shed.
Could I have the applicant, please?
Hi, good evening. This is Jacqueline Shore and my husband, Greg Shore.
Okay, good evening.
Hi. We have Scott Young going to be speaking on our behalf tonight.
Oh, okay, fine.
Thank you.
Mr. Young, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Could you just state your name, spell your last name so we get it correct for the record, and give your address,
Sure.
please?
Scott Young, Y-O-U-N-G, 1981 Union Boulevard, Bay Shore, New York, 11706.
All right, thank you.
So our application here, as was previously described, we're asking for an increase from 30% to 40% GFA. We're looking to maintain the existing side yard setbacks on both sides for the proposed second story addition for the existing house. Characteristics of the structure are in like and in kind for the surrounding neighborhood and surrounding area. There are no other options for them as far as going out on the property. Going up makes the most sense, most cost effective. The only other thing would be to, minimize side yard, which would create financial hardship for the applicants on the space that is required. Families growing, they're looking to stay within the neighborhood. So we're trying to keep the family in the neighborhood and hopefully get this application on the way.
All right. Going from 30 to 40% is quite substantial. Mr. Donadio and myself rode by the neighborhood the other day, and 40% would be huge for that neighborhood.
I understand. We're looking, the existing house right now is sprawled out. We're trying to minimize going further out on the existing, as far as the existing lot. We're trying to stay within the bounds of the footprints of the existing house to get them to have their family nice space to live in. Basically, they're outgrowing the space, unfortunately, and we're trying to, again, keep somebody in the neighborhood. Any other options would create, financial hardship for my clients, and we would obviously not want them to, potentially have to sell their house or leave or move somewhere else in order to get this going.
What's the size of the existing house right now?
The existing house footprint is 1945 without the sunroom, garage, and covered porch. Livable square footage.
And you're looking to go to what?
1695.
An additional 1695.
Correct, sir. Some of the space is open to below. It's not full usable space. There's some additional, excuse me one second, I'll flip to my page. We are creating a, open to wall loft space, which unfortunately is going to be adding to that square footage, but will be necessary to connect both sides of the house together. We'll be moving all the bedrooms upstairs now and creating a larger living room space downstairs. It's more or less trying to accommodate all the needs that they, all the wants that they have and what wants they need in one footprint.
All right. You still there?
I'm here.
Okay. The screen changed on me, so. Is there anyone on the board that has any questions on this application?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Like the chairman had said, 40% is quite substantial, and we rarely go to that level unless there's a hardship that exists that isn't a financial hardship. We have to look at 5 considerations, and financial hardship isn't one of them. I think if you could give us, some options, we'd be easier looking at this application. It is a substantially large home for that community, and we try to avoid putting in homes that aren't within the character of the neighborhood. So, I know you said it's 1945 square feet without the sunroom. I do believe, Blaze, do those normally count in the calculation?
If you want,
they are?
yes.
Yes, usually the garage and any enclosed space is included in calculating the floor area ratio.
So what is that what are those numbers? If you could give me that, Mr. Young.
The sunroom is 329, excuse me. And the existing garage is 233.
And the sunroom again was what, sir?
329 square feet.
329.
Yes,
You know
329.
what I'm sorry, do you know what the square footage of the lot is?
The square footage of the lot is 11,052 square feet.
So right now you're at roughly a 21% floor area ratio.
Correct. Without the garage included. With the garage, we were at 24.03%.
Yeah, I come up with 4,202 square feet.
Yes, correct. I have the garage counted the 2.10% in my calculation on the site plan that was submitted.
Okay.
So we would be not at 40, we'd be at approximately 37 and change, 37.27. And I would also like to add on behalf of my clients, another reason why they are planning on doing this addition is they have a handicapped family member that is going to be moving in with them. And moving up is going to help accommodate this individual in the household and whatnot. They're trying to open up the spaces to allow, handicap accessibility through the house with ease. There are certain, spaces in the house that are kind of tight now that you wouldn't be able to get somebody with a wheelchair or a walker through. So that's another reasoning why we're trying to make this addition and this renovation happen and go this size and scale.
All right. Anyone else on the board have any questions?
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
Actually, if I could just ask Mr. Young a couple of quick questions. I just want to make sure I have my numbers correct.
Of course.
You said that the square footage of the lot is 11,052 square feet,
Correct, sir.
and that the existing square footage of the single-family house without the garage and sunroom is 1,695 square feet.
No, so the existing first floor without the sunroom, garage, and the front covered porch was 1,945 square feet.
1,945.
Yeah, so if we have to add in the sunroom on that calculation, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out, where you'd be at roughly to see if it really does come out to be 40%. Unfortunately, because of the size of the first floor, it does come out to be 40%. Just for the board's information, even for the applicant, I did do a little bit of research in the immediate area, looking at some of the other homes on Evers Court. And there was only one other home in recent years that requested a variance to increase the FAR. And that was from, at the time, the FAR was permitted to be 25%. And they were looking to go from 25 to 31%. And the board approved it to 26%. And Matt is now putting up on the screen that information. I believe that's number 5, Evers Court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the sunroom is definitely enclosed though, correct? It's not, it's enclosed in the sense that it's full glass walls and they're not.
It's not insulated or anything like that. It does not have a heating element or whatnot in it. It's just, it's like a 3 seasons room. We're calling it a sunroom, but it's not insulated or finished off in a manner where you can occupy it, full year round.
Right. If you could discount the sunroom, you'd be at roughly 35% FAR. But I don't know if the building department would look at the sunroom in its current configuration and not consider it as part of the floor area ratio. But if somehow you could lose approximately 300 square feet, you'd be down to roughly 35%.
I would have to obviously speak with my clients prior to making any commitment, but the sunroom was existing when they purchased the home. They use it, like I said, as a 3 seasons room. The windows are even, they pop out if we need to, need be. They're not fully installed all the time. It is treated like a sunroom. It is not treated like a full occupiable space. So I'm hoping the board and the building department would view it as it's intended, as a sunroom and not a full livable space to help assist my clients. Everything else on the site, like I said, has been existing when they had purchased the home. We're trying not to make any huge additions to the footprint and sprawl this house out any further. And that's why we went directly above the existing footprint of the house in order to accommodate the spaces that they need.
I have a question.
Truly.
I calculate, even if we don't use the sunroom and we use the garage, it's still going to be 3,876 square feet.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else, please?
That's all.
That's all, okay. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
No, Chairman.
No? All right. Just so you know, Mr. Young, there'll be no decision on your case tonight. We don't have a CEQA, so we have to wait for a CEQA.
Okay.
So can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
You too now. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18483, Brett James, 38 Terry Lane, Comac. The location of the property, the north side of Terry Lane, 385 feet east of Ott Place. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 40 feet to 39 feet for a proposed 36 square foot front portico. To reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 8 feet, total side yards from 28 feet to 20 feet for a proposed 27 square foot side deck. Reduce the total side yards from 28 feet to 24 feet for a proposed 939 square foot first floor addition.
All right. Could I have the applicant, please?
Yes, right here, Brett James.
All right. Good evening, sir. Could you just state your name and address, please, for the record?
Sure, Brett James, 38 Terry Lane, Comac, New York.
All right, Brett, would you like to tell us why you're here tonight?
Yes, as the gentleman just mentioned, we're looking for some additions to that front of the house as well as the side of the house. Again, just to rephrase, enlarging the front entry with a front yard setback of 39.4 feet, where 40 is required. In addition to the side of the house with a side yard of 12 feet and a total side yard of 28 feet is required, and we're requesting a total of 24 feet in total.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Oh, thank you.
No question.
No. Planning?
Oh, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
No, Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. With that said, can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
The next case to be heard is case number 1-18245, 779A Middle Country Road, LLC. The location of the property is 779 Middle Country Road, the northeast corner of Middle Country Road and Hobson Avenue. The property is owned WSI. The applicant is requesting a modification of a special exception to permit a change of use from 4 repair garages to 1 automobile showroom with indoor storage of 25 vehicles and outdoor display of 5 vehicles. 1 repair garage, 1 electrical warehouse, and 1 auto body repair garage to be used as accessory to the automobile showroom. to reduce the parking setback on Hobson Avenue from 25 feet to 7 feet, reduce the parking setback on Middle Country Road from 25 feet to 14 feet, and a variance to increase the number of wall signs from 1 to 2.
Good evening, Mr. King.
Al King, 75 East Main Street, Kings Park, New York. Attorney for the applicant. I want to say at the outset to thank Blaze. He's been on this with me for maybe a year or so. The planning department has recommended approval of all of the variances. I ask the board to please follow the planning board's recommendation and grant this application. I'd also like to thank Vinnie Tremarco for letting me jump in here.
Okay. He'll probably make you pay for that, Don.
He will. He's probably, his nurse and his minder are probably mad about this.
Is there anyone on the board that has any questions on this application?
I have a question. How many times in history has Don King suggested we listen to the planning department?
Never.
Never.
Not during my lifetime.
Planning, anything?
Well, as Mr. King stated, we did prepare a planning advisory report for the board. We did, after our review, recommend approval with the only condition that additional parking not be constructed along Middle Country Road so that we can maintain the existing landscaping that's there. That's it.
We concur.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard on this application?
No, Chairman.
No? Could I have a motion to close the application, please? Second. Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Before we start Owl Hills Estate, we're just going to take a 5-minute break. It appears that there are a number of people who want to speak. Let's just go over the procedures real quick one more time. I believe Mr. Tremarco is presenting this case. He'll present it. Once he's done, if the board has any questions or planning has any questions, they will be asked. Then we'll open it up to the general public. Everybody will be given one opportunity to speak on the case. Once everyone is done, we'll bring Mr. Tremarco back to answer your questions or concerns, and then we'll close the application. Okay, just one other thing. If you're going to read a written statement into the record, could you do so slowly, please? When you're reading something, you have a tendency to take off, and it's hard for the court reporter to get everything down. Okay. Blaze is there? Okay. All right, Mr. Tremarco. Blaze has to read the case into the record first. I'm sorry.
The next case is case number 18429, Owl Hill Estates and Preserve LLC. The location of the property is Sunken Meadow Road in Fort Salonga. The zoning is R43. The applicant is requesting a variance to permit environmentally sensitive land to be altered where slopes are in excess of 15% within the subdivision known as Owl Hill Estates and Preserve.
Okay, Mr. Tremarco.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. This afternoon, we submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to the planning department. I'd first like to indicate that due to Mr. King's advanced stage, I let him go first. And hopefully when I get as old as him, he'll let me go first. In any event, everybody is familiar, at least in Fort Salonga, and I'm sure many of the board members are familiar with the Owl Hill Estate. The property is very well known in Fort Salonga. It's been an estate since the early 1900s. Our proposal is to construct 15 2/3 of an acre lots on actually one side of the property on a single road that ends and terminates in a cul-de-sac. An additional lot is a separate lot, lot 16, which you can see is in the middle of the property. And that's the estate lot where the original estate house still stands. And the estate house is approximately 6,500 square feet. And the acreage that's attached to that lot is about 5 acres. Moving along to the north, you can see a very large area. It's called the Conservation Area Number 1. That complete parcel is going to be dedicated to the town of Smithtown for open space. If you look down to the lower left of the property, there's a small conservation area of about 3/4 of an acre. So you have conservation area number 1, approximately 8 acres. Conservation area number 2, about 3/4 of an acre. And if you count the estate mansion, which normally would be on, even if you say 1 acre, the current zoning, you still have 4 more acres that's going to be preserved in its natural state. So there are about 13 acres total that are going to be preserved. And that's not counting the conservation areas, or we call them buffer zones, along the outside perimeter of the map on the south, the west, and going down the north side where you see the estate lot. Additionally, pursuant to New York State law, we are required to build and sell within certain price limits. In this case, 2 workforce housing units, and they will front on Route 25A. The total project is 27.63 acres. So you can see that a great part of the property is dedicated to open space. And we feel that the cluster zoning that you see in this map is the best way to preserve it. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why they came up in our zoning ordinance to promote this type of cluster zoning. I want to emphasize that we are not asking for any more lots than a traditional 1 acre parcel would generate in this particular area. So the yield is the same. We're not getting any more lots because we're clustering. Actually, that's not even permitted in the ordinance. We have spent many hours with the planning department going over the proposed subdivision of the property. It was their suggestion to use a cluster approach to the property, in that it would preserve a substantial amount of greenery for the area. So additionally, the planning board has recommended to your board that you approve the steep slope variance that we're requesting, as it really is the most suitable way and economic way, not only for my client, but for the township and the county, to both, in this situation, gain a vast amount of land that will be protected forever. You can see that that street It's now called Proposed Road. I don't know what the name is going to be, but anyway, that's where the majority of the houses are centered around. And it, as I said, terminates in a cul-de-sac, but there is a buffer zone all around every lot in that cluster area, which will not be part of the building area. So adjoining houses, as you can see in the aerial, will be protected by the existing trees and foliage that has been there for many years. So we think that, again, it's the best approach to a situation that has an historic house, had a very well-known person build the house, an inventor, as well as the architect, who also was a famous man in its time. So we don't think it'll have an adverse effect on adjacent properties. It's nestled in, as you can see, on one side of the property, on its own road. By the way, the road does terminate in a cul-de-sac, and it does not go through. If you look at the map on the other side, there's a Yorktown Place with basically dead ends into the property, and that will remain as it's existed for many years. Is it a substantial variance? No, we think not. This is the best way to handle the steep slopes in Fort Salonga. It was recommended by the planning board. Is there an alternative? Well, the only other alternative would be to build 1 acre lots and use up basically the whole property. I think would be a much more situation, which would not be as good as all of the land that we're now saving for posterity. So it's been designed to maximize open space. The open space, the variance wouldn't have an adverse effect on the environment, again, because we're preserving almost half the property to allow future generations and present generations to appreciate the land. Was the difficulty self-created or by a former owner? No, it's not. As you well know, it's been 27.63 acres with one house on it. Well, since about 1907, I think there was a little more land on it in the early years that was split off facing 25A, and there were a few houses that were built there. So anyway, we asked the board for its favorable consideration. If need be, I have our engineer who is available, as well as one of the developers. And I asked the board for its favorable consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tramarko. Does anyone on the board have any questions on the application?
I just have a quick question for you, Mr. Tramarko, or maybe the engineer. It appears from the topo and personal knowledge of the area that the slopes on this site run effectively from the northwest to the southeast. Is that correct?
From the northwest to the southeast. I think Andrew is available. Andrew, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me? It's Andrew.
Andrew, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. That's correct.
1 second, please. Andrew, could you introduce yourself, spell your last name, and give your address, please, for the record?
Yeah, of course. My name is Andrew Stolzenberg, Stolzenberg, site engineer with Barrett, Bonacci, and Van Weel, 175A Commerce Drive, Hauppauge.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it does slope from northwest to southeast?
Correct. Generally speaking, yeah.
So from personal knowledge, I know that area of Sunken Meadow Road historically has been pretty bad with flooding. It appears that you have a pretty large recharge basin, I guess in the southeast corner of the developed part,
Correct.
and that would retain all of the water that would be
Correct. That is
on-site.
for all the stormwater generated by the new road, the proposed road, and the front yards of the proposed lots. And the rear yards and the roofs would be handled by individual dry wells on the
But
respective
all
lots.
maintained on each
I need you
individual.
to speak one at a time because I'm getting a partial record.
So that all of those individual houses would maintain all of their own stormwater runoff, and then all of the public area runoff would be caught in that recharge and not run out on the Sunken Meadow Road.
Correct. The rear yards of the dwellings on the east side would be accommodated by individual dry wells. The front yards would drain towards the road and into the recharge basin.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other board member have any questions?
No, thank you.
No. Planning?
Just to reiterate what Mr. Tramarko said, the planning board did have a preliminary public hearing regarding the subdivision. And they did, in fact, draft a recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals, recommending that the variance for the environmentally sensitive land be approved for the subdivision, subject to a number of conditions. Additionally, I do believe that our environmental director, David Barnes, issued a preliminary secret determination stating that the application is a type 1 application and does involve further review by the New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Society.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to make one more comment, Mr. Benz. I'm sorry, but the indication of the State Parks Commission actually came to light about 4 o'clock today when Mr. Barnes called me, and he told me that he just got the news also. However, the actual write-up, which I think you have, because Mr. Barnes said he was going to send it to you, was drafted. It has a date of March 4th, 2021. So it was recent, but only came to the town's attention as well as my attention, I think, about 4 o'clock today. Anyway, we're going to investigate that.
All right, thank you. Blaze, you're done, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would just also like to point out, as Mr. Tramarko stated, if you do look at the subdivision map, and Matt, if you could bring up the color-coded map, you can see that a considerable portion of the property is actually being preserved as conservation to be left in its natural state. In addition to that, the existing home, the single-family home that's on the property, the home itself is being maintained and preserved, as well as approximately 5 acres of land that will remain with the dwelling. In addition to that, I was just reading through the planning board recommendation, the conditions that they stated, and there is a concern about the size of the recharge basin that's at the southeastern portion of the proposed subdivision. It is very large. It's approximately 2 acres, which seems to be just too big for what its intended purposes is for. So the planning board would like, I'm assuming planning and the developer, to look into alternatives that would not require constructing and utilizing such a large piece of property, and that property as well could be preserved.
All right, thank you. Okay. Right now, we'll open it up to the general public. we have the first speaker, please?
Yes, I'm just pulling up the chat here. I believe I have Andrew Lang. Andrew Lang, you have a question. Do you want to state it for the record?
All right, first of all, who's the speaker?
Andrew Lang.
Andrew, are you there?
He's got to unmute himself. Hang on. Here you go. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yes, Andrew Lang.
One second, Andrew. Could you introduce yourself, spell your last name so we get it correct for the record, and give your address, please?
Andrew Lang, last name L-A-N-G. Residence is 103 Sunken Meadow Road in Fort Salonga.
All right, thank you.
My question is really regarding the workforce housing. What is that for? Are those going to be individual residences or dorm style housing? And if so, how many people are going to be residing there?
All right, I'll ask Mr. Tramarko to answer that question for you.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat the question, please? I didn't get it.
He wanted to know about the workforce housing.
Yes.
Is it dormitory, multiple people living in it?
Oh, no. The workforce housing is a state law, and it requires a developer who builds any more than 5 houses to then build a workforce house. And that workforce house is a one-family dwelling, but it's confined to certain economic terms and prices. So that, I guess it's, people starting out, they may be like, for example, we had one a couple of years ago, and the town put it on a website, and there was a lottery, actually, a drawing, and a young man and I believe his wife won the lottery, and a house was built by the developer, and it had to fit certain economic guidelines. In that case, I think the house was sold for, I'm not positive, but 380 to 400,000. That was a few years ago. I think the price is probably going up a little bit, but they're definitely one-family dwellings. That's the whole purpose of the workforce housing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tramarko. Andrew, anything else?
So that basically is just going to be affordable housing for people who can't afford the $1 million houses. Are they going to exit using that, what used to be the back exit to that Owl Hill estate?
It looks like it. If you look at the map, yeah, there is a driveway there. So
because I know there used to be an exit or an entrance to the estate that terminated on 25A. I'm just assuming that it was going to be right about there.
Yeah, within that vicinity, yes.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Okay, next we have Sarah Couts. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. If you don't mind just repeating your name.
Hi, yes, it's Sarah Couts.
Thank you.
Could you spell Sarah, can you spell your last name and give your address, please, so we get it correct for the record?
Sure. My name is Sarah Couts, K-A-U-T-Z. I am the Preservation Director at Preservation Long Island. We are a regional nonprofit that advocates for historic preservation throughout the region, and our headquarters is located at 161 Main Street in Cold Spring Harbor.
All right, thank you.
Sure, thank you. So this, as we heard just recently, this property is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, which does trigger a more intensive review in terms of SECRA. It is a type 1, and that's because of the thresholds, because of the density and the intensiveness of this proposal. It's going to trigger the type 1 review. So one thing that I am concerned with as well is that the planning board made the recommendation without the EAF, the environmental assessment form. As far as I understand it, that's still being completed. That's not available. It wasn't available to the public during that first hearing at the planning board regarding their recommendations. So that form is so super important because that form is how we understand the scope and the breadth of what's being proposed in terms of the impacts on the environment. And in terms of SECRA, as you all know, it's not just about the natural resources. Of course, the natural resources are important, but environment is defined by SECRA as historic, cultural, aesthetic, architectural. It's anything in the human built environment. So it's a very broad sort of way to look at environment. And those are all things we are concerned about too, because we feel all of that human environment is historic and cultural, and that's significant. So I submitted a letter of comment formally, so that would be available. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to highlight that concern. So the first concern is that this is a very intensive impact. It's basically the entire half of the western portion of the property. It's going to be really intensively redeveloped. And in terms of the historic nature of the whole property, yes, there will be a sliver of a lot with the old house on it, but really the architecture is the entire thing. If you go to the property and you see the winding driveway and these beautiful sloping hills and the mature trees in this landscape, the mature plants, all of that was part of the design. The landscape is definitely part of the house. It's not just the structure on its own. And then we also have outbuildings in this landscape to the west, which are part of the building as a whole. So I just want to emphasize that we're not just talking about the house, we're talking about the whole thing. Of course, it's significant for an architect named Henry K. Murphy. He was a world famous architect. He's most famous for his work in Asia. He built many well-known campuses of major universities in Asia. And of course, he built it for Mr. Wetmore, who was one of the first leading patent attorneys in the United States. So a very significant Smithtonian. And we're concerned that, you know, the full scope and breadth of the impacts has not been made clear because we don't have the environmental assessment form. And then we don't have the environmental impact statement, which, you know, again, as a type 1 action, we really should have that environmental impact statement to fully understand the scope, but also to explore alternatives. I don't know what the alternatives are. They've never been clearly explained. And as far as I understand it, the only reason to not look at an alternative has to do with yield and theoretically, you know, financial gain, which is, you know, a factor for the investors and developers. But in terms of the wider community, that's, you know, not really a major impact for them. What they're most concerned about is the effects on their community and quality of life. And I think such intensive redevelopment would have a very extremely significant impact. So again, I would recommend, and Preservation Long Island would recommend, a positive declaration for the EAF whenever it's completed. I don't know if this application is complete without it. In other instances I've seen, the EAF is part of an application like this, just again, because the public needs that information. And without it, we just don't know the whole scope of what's being proposed and the impacts. And then from there, move on to the draft environmental impact statement, which would be a more rigorous look at what's being proposed and then potential alternatives. So again, it doesn't have to be no development happens here, but what are the other alternatives that might be more sensitive for this very sensitive historic and environmental property? We're not far from the Sunken Meadow Creek estuary here, which is an incredibly sensitive environment. And as the other gentleman noted, the way the slopes are directed here, it all drains down into that estuary. So anything draining off this area ends up in the Sunken Meadow Creek estuary. The other thing I wanted to note, because of the way the terrain, the topography, it's a very high potential to have archaeological resources. And those are something that, we would recommend archaeological survey to be conducted in order to assess the potential for intact archaeological deposits on this site, especially prehistoric. This is in a perfect kind of location between two estuaries on a high hilltop for Native American burials and other sacred sites. So as far as I know, there's never been a survey. So we don't really know what this location, what the potential is for prehistoric and historic deposits. So that would be an important thing to consider. And then finally, I just wanted to point out that if you look at the lots to the west, they also have quite large, long lots that go up and over and sort of transverse a lot of slopes that are technically unbuildable. And all the houses on these lots are along Sunken Meadow Road. And I think granting these variances might kind of open a floodgate for these other many, many more properties to the west that are along this same very steep slope terrain to start doing subdivisions and building too. And it's very detrimental because of the terrain. It would create a lot of flooding, erosion. So it might be, in this particular instance, perhaps it doesn't seem like it would have that great of an impact, but if these other properties start subdividing too, it would definitely change this whole neighborhood very deeply. And then on a final note, I wanted to say, the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation does offer guidance and comments concerning applications if a municipality reaches out and asks for their consultation. And that's a non-binding consultation that they offer as part of their work. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Okay, who's next?
So I have Peter and Sarah next, followed by Ryan Hild.
All right, Peter and
Good
Sarah?
evening. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Peter and Sarah, 19 Williamsburg Drive.
Can you spell your last name, please, so we get it correct for the record?
INSERRA.
And your address, Peter, I'm sorry.
19 Williamsburg Drive.
Okay.
The corner of Williamsburg and Yorktown.
All right.
So I've been here since 1993, and I have a couple of questions. One is very interesting because it came up today. He was talking about the drainage, and there was some discussion here. I live on the bottom of that Yorktown place, and I collect pretty much all the water that comes down that hill. I've had to place a number of drainage in my lawn, four different large, I guess I forget what you actually call them, but I spent a lot of money with a landscaper to really funnel off that water that comes down around that hill down the property lines on Yorktown. So I have a concern on that ridge line that those last two houses, I guess they're 8 or 9, or I guess 7, 8, or 9 that are on that, that are near the, right there, yeah. So first of all, I think we talked about a 50-foot buffer. I would be concerned that maybe that could be a little bit more. And the homes are going to be built on that hill, or are they going to be below that hill? Are they going to be on top of that ridge, or are they going to be into that ridge, or what's going to happen there? Are they flattening that out? Because I think that would cause some concerns. The gentleman mentioned that there's going to be the discharge for the front will go into that discharge area, but the backyards there, I imagine the homeowner is going to be responsible for their own drainage. It's extremely important in that area. There's a lot of underground streams and water that come down that hill, run down Yorktown towards Williamsburg Drive. I have the experience, anybody wants to come to the property and walk my property, you could see it's damp. It's always some water there, and it sits, but it runs right down that Owl Hill, makes a right-hand turn and runs along the property lines on Yorktown. So that's one concern. I would think I'd like that addressed. Second part was the height on those hills. Those homes going to be up there higher in those hills. And just to support some of what I just said here, we just had on Yorktown, we just had the Suffolk County Water Authority here for the last 3 days, where they had some leakage in the street. So we had a runoff coming down. I had sent some pictures this morning. I don't think they're here, but I did take some pictures of what that looks like coming down the hill and running down the street.
Not to interrupt you, Peter, but we got your email and all of your pictures, and they will be entered into the record.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's a good idea to show you what concerns are there. And then just on the side note, that because it was mentioned here, and I just found it interesting, the houses that you're talking about, I guess along 25A, those two houses that the gentleman asked about before, I suspect you're going to come out right on 25A there. Now I'm a runner and a biker, and I'm along that road all the time. I'm not sure how that's going to affect those people driving along 25A. It's horrendous over there. We already have a problem with cars coming down that hill, 60, 70 miles an hour. It's a very dangerous entrance or exit there. But I know that there is an existing road there, it looks like. But, so that's my comment. I'm concerned about the drainage, and the buffer between those last few houses and my neighbors over there on Yorktown.
Okay, we'll get an answer for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Who's next?
Next is Ryan Hild.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was
Could you
hitting
Could you state your name, spell your last name, give your address for the record, please, sir?
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Ryan, R-Y-A-N. The last name is Hild, H-I-L-D. I live at 4 Yorktown Place. I am basically 2 doors down from the back end of the proposed development. And I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Smithtown. As it happens, I happen to live near this property, and for the last, I guess it's about 10 years, I've headed up Smithtown affairs for the Fort Salonga Association on the Civic Board. Our president is here tonight. I've seen him on the Zoom, and I know that he'll be likely be speaking, so I'll let him handle a lot of the topics. But I wanted to get a few items across. First thing is, I applaud the efforts of Sarah Katz and her Sarah Katz.
Okay.
For the letter and report that she put together, advising everyone of where there's basically the significance of the environmentals at the site. I think she brought a lot of information really to light to the Civic Association, and I think that this board this evening. But if I'm to sort of move away from preservation, if I am to assume this property is to be developed as opposed to it being preserved, I feel that I would have to make a few comments about the proposed subdivision. So first things first is, zoning is paramount for the Fort Salonga Association. For our 74 years, 1 acre zoning has been basically our calling card, doing everything we can to protect the 1 acre zone. But at the same time, we also are here to preserve and protect green space. Always have been and always will. So this particular project, of course, is an interesting combination of the two. I would say, I used the word before applauding Sarah. I applaud the town Mr. Tramarko and all involved with the planning with regards to preserving upwards of 10 acres here, or at least putting together about 10 acres to be preserved. But with regards to the lots and the lot sizes, I will say this. As a member of the Civic Board, one of the things we just get, we get a lot of, if you want to say flack or information from residents is size of lots. So I understand you can't have our cake and eat it too here with this, with this particular plan. However, right now, I know Mr. Tramarko had mentioned early on when he started his presentation that they were 3/4 of an acre of lot per lot. My last review of them was really more like half-acre lots. I guess maybe if anything has changed, Mr. Tramarko would be great to let us know or confirm. The reason I ask is there's a major difference. I mean, half acres versus 0.75 in a 1 acre zoned area. So I would say the half acres is a little rough for the association to take. And we really would be asking for this board, as well as Mr. Tramarko and his client, and anyone else within the town in developing this plan to really take that into account. I had to go to look at evidence just because as an attorney myself, I find, you got to back up what you're going to maybe ask about. So I pulled out the tax map for this entire section of Fort Salonga. And this entire section, including the pretty recently developed Rolling Meadow subdivision, there isn't a single half-acre lot on the entire tax map. So if we're here to, to sort of not offend zoning or to keep the neighborhood as is, I have an entire section of the tax map there where there isn't one single half-acre lot, but for maybe, some drainage lots or what. This entire section of Fort Salonga is legitimately is 1 acre. Rolling Meadow is all 1 acre and above. Years before that, Pitch Pine Court was built, and they're all 1 to 2 acres, and they preserve over 2 acres as part of that project. So, where do my comments lead us? Mr. and Sarah particularly pointed out lots 8 and 9 on the subdivision map, the proposed lots 8 and 9. Lots 8 and 9, as they are at the rear, it just so happens to be that they're also at the highest point topographically. Probably the highest point in all of Fort Salonga. And not for nothing, it's called Owl Hill for a reason. And I bet you that is the hill where the Owl Hill gets its name. Right now, with the elevation being so high at 8 and 9, if you put a 2-story plus home of 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, they'll literally be looking down upon on the half acre there, looking down upon everyone in the Colony Woods subdivision, which is the Yorktown Place, Williamsburg Drive, and Hastings. And I don't know, we look at that and just think planning or review wise, that those particular lots just seem to be the most environmentally and visually offensive of all the lots. Moving on to the affordable workforce housing lots, I'm not sure what size the acreage of those are. It looks like they may be like a 1/4 acre. I can't really tell. But the interesting point on those, and Keith McCarthy, our president, may mention this also, but is there a flag lot, which has been the bane of Smithtown's existence for many, many, many years. So at the moment, they're basically shoehorned in, and on what looks like very small lots. not against the idea of affordable workforce housing to permit maybe family members or kids out of college or recently working to maybe win a lottery to stay home. But at the moment, the way that it's set up with a flag lot, I mean, usually those are turned away by the town without a blink. But here, for some reason, they're being, I guess, they haven't been. But I guess really for there, other than that, Sarah nailed the environmental angle with Fort Salonga Civic Association. The environmentals are paramount, and we of course support all environmental review for this and any other property within Fort Salonga. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can we have the next speaker, please?
Yes, Keith McCartney from Fort Salonga Association. Give him a second to unmute. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Keith McCartney. That's MACARTNEY. I reside at 273 Bread and Cheese Hollow Road in Fort Salonga, and I am the current president of the Fort Salonga Association.
Good evening.
Good evening. First, I would like to second and third applauding Sarah Couch's talk about the historical nature of Owl Hill. Being a longtime resident of Fort Salonga, I can tell you from personal experience, just from my property, we have arrowheads and other natural artifacts that date back 5,000 years. Okay, this is the same type of information that we'll find most likely on the Owl Hill property. Okay, Fort Salonga is much more than just the Fort Salonga. It's about the history dating back 5,000 years. And there's a good possibility in building this kind of development on Owl Hill could ruin whatever is left of the artifacts in this area. I'm also concerned about the maintenance of the existing homestead. Who is going to take care of the maintenance and for how long? Okay, there's quite a bit of upkeep in an historic house, as I can tell you personally. I would also like to agree with Ryan Hill's assertion in respect to the lot size. By allowing for half-acre cluster zoning, it would open the door to a multitude of other landowners attempting to do the same thing in Fort Salonga. Through the history of Fort Salonga, it has been 1 acre zoning. It would really be a shame to see that change now and ruin the nature of Fort Salonga as it has been. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Next speaker.
Yes, it is Peter. I'm going to butcher this. I apologize. Peter Mikolajuk. Sorry, just pronounce your name again for us.
No problem. Peter Mikolayuk, Mikolajuk, 5 Yorktown Place. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am the homeowner, which is, I am located right behind dwelling number 8. I am the closest one, I believe, to the area being developed. I would like to agree with Ryan and Peter that those homes are located number 8 and number 9 on top of a hill, looking down on the on my home and the home across the street, 6 Yorktown Place. I understand there's a buffer, a zone, of wooded area of looks like 50, 75 feet looking at the map, but I don't think that is remotely enough for all of the owners and families that purchased the properties in Fort Salonga. The property number 8 is only 26,000 square feet, which is just over or less than half or about half an acre which currently we have a minimum zoning of 1 acre. So the wooded area that it's shown is, I don't think gonna be there. As a homeowner, everybody will want to open up their yard. And I am sure that maybe in the near future, they will want to develop a pool, and that buffer zone will no longer be there. Who is to say to those owners that a pool is not legal to do anymore, which if this case, if they will do that, I will high five them from my pool to their pool. So I think a 1 acre zoning should still be maintained. As far as the drainage, I have a pool located there. It's a 20-foot slope. Last year, there was so much rain and so much water that actually pulled my liner and the side of the pool into my pool, causing it to collapse. So I am concerned with how they're gonna develop this without causing any more problems going down to Yorktown Place, like Peter and Ryan said before, because it's a major concern. Everything goes down and it just sits at the end of the block, and it's a major problem that we are all facing. I'm also would like to say that preserving the land is very important. I see it firsthand, the owls and the deers and all of the beauty and natural life that's behind next to my property. I seen an owl literally 3 days ago, and coming home today, I seen deer walking by, which is no longer gonna be the case. And I think that should be also, thought about. With that said, thank you very much and have a great night.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker?
Next speaker is, John, John Impagliazzo, sorry.
Okay. Yes, thank you. My name is Dr. John Impagliazzo, Impagliazzo. I'm at 2 Meadow Glen Road, Fort Salonga. I happen to live opposite side of Sunken Meadow Road, on the south side of Sunken Meadow Road of this proposal. I find it very offensive that the developer is thinking of building on lots that are smaller than the minimum size, which is 1 acre. From the plan given, there is absolutely no reason why those lot sizes could be 1 acre or more, which would actually make the area more appealing. Also, there'll be a tremendous amount of traffic with the proposed number of houses from this whole area that will come onto Sunken Meadow Road and then try to make their way generally to 25A, which is maybe a quarter of a mile away. We don't have this kind of cluster of so many homes with smaller properties, and we're not even sure of the quality of homes. Just down the street from me, about a stone's throw away, maybe 1,000 feet, built a house, and it was 6,000 something square feet. I don't know the price, but it should be close to $2 million. So what kind of homes are going to be there on these small lots with all these drainage properties and problems that would occur? I mean, just this morning, I saw a deer on the property. And so I think the whole idea of the environmental protection, as Sarah had proposed, should be considered. It seems to be totally ignored. It is important that Fort Salonga have this type of area that is preserved. The alternative to this would perhaps just put a few houses, okay, and maintain the serenity of the area, or better yet, have no house and have it as a preserved area, sanctuary within the town of Smithtown. It's a beautiful area. It's going to be in effect destroyed by this cluster of houses and all the problems associated with it. I do commend the developer for allowing so much other property to be part of free area in the town of Smithtown. But this whole idea is very, very negative. And I hope that the planning board and the Board of Zoning Appeals consider all the ideas that were already mentioned, and particularly the environmental, and that they keep this here as it is, or if they are going to develop it within the law. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Next is Frank Romano. You missed, there you go.
Hello, Frank Romano, R-O-M-A-N-O, 3 Yorktown Place. Good evening. I basically intend to mirror most of what Ryan and Peter said, and to commend Sarah on a beautiful and eloquent speech about all the other impacts I was not aware of. The first thing I would like to say is that it took my family and I until about 2.5 years ago to acquire a home in this area. And really, this is a dream come true for me to be able to move our family into this neighborhood. And I can guarantee you it is the beautiful aesthetic that brought us here. And in the last 1.5 years, we've had to tolerate a group home being built on our block, which is something that it's pretty upsetting. So a few of the things were already mentioned, runoff. I don't know about sewage and the impact of that on us, but yeah, we all have soggy yards here, and it's going to be a problem because we know that the landscapers and the developer are going to pitch that downhill. They're not going to, design the shape of the earth to make the water go in a different direction. So we are going to be impacted by the runoff from that. And it's already a significant issue for me and my yard. Basically, it's a slip and slide until about late August. Also, having these homes 7, 8, and 9 really virtually on top of us looking down, this is akin to pulling up to the Magic Kingdom. I mean, this is just going to be a complete eyesore and look like 3 castles on top of the hill. And I just can't get over the idea that this is going to be the new look of the neighborhood. Traffic, I definitely see that as being a dangerous thing. Cramming 18 homes or whatever it is, 13 homes into that space and having them come onto a road that's already overwhelmed just seems like insanity. And this barrier, 50 feet, I mean, it just seems insignificant to a sizable development in our neighborhood. And I don't want to rehash things that were already said, but this will change the look of the neighborhood. People come to Fort Salonga for the beauty and the privacy, and putting a development of this size and scale in this neighborhood will change it forever. So, I'm not even a baseball fan, but you don't redesign the Yankees logo at this point in time, okay? And you don't put a development like this in a neighborhood like this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Next is, I just have Maria. I don't have her full name, so I'm just going to ask her to pronounce and spell her name as well.
Certainly. Hello, Maria.
My name is, I'm speaking for my wife. My name is Jerome Sinise, 87 Sunken Meadow Road in Fort Salonga.
Could you spell your last name, please?
S-E-N-I-S-E.
Thank you.
I am the property adjacent to the left side
of this monstrosity that's going to be constructed. Everyone is complaining about houses bordering their property. I will have approximately 5 or 6 houses bordering my property. I run about 600 or so feet from Sunken Meadow Road completely straight up the left side of this subdivision with a 50-foot buffer of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, approximately 5 houses. And the entrance to the subdivision would be equivalent to an adjoining lot, similar to all the lots to the left of me. So basically the next driveway, which would be equivalent to my driveway on the right side of my property, would be the thoroughfare for 15 homes rather than a single driveway for one house. I'm on 2 acres, okay? And this is like having a Levittown built in the middle of Fort Salonga. I'm very upset about it. And I think that the buffers are way too small. The properties are too small. And I'm gonna have cars coming up and down the side of my property all day long and all night long, as if what should be a driveway to a single house is now a driveway to 15 homes. Okay, and Sunken Meadow Road is a quiet road. It's a curvy road. It's a dangerous road, and to have this to be an entrance right in the middle of a private area like that, it's just beyond belief. So I'm asking the town to reconsider this configuration of homes, and I'm the only one that's going to be adjoined by so many homes. One home adjoins somebody's property or 2 properties on the top. The right side adjoins the original house on the estate. And I have 5 homes adjoining my property with a 50-foot buffer. They're going to all be looking down upon me.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you, John.
Jerry.
Do we have another speaker?
At this time, I have nobody else in the chat or with their hands up. Do you want me to give it a second in case anybody else?
Yeah, let's give it a minute to make sure before we bring Mr. Tramarko back.
Okay, and I'll just remind folks, you can use the raise hand function, which you can find at the bottom of your participant sidebar, or also under the reactions, looks like a smiley face with a plus sign, or just could push the chat button and put your name down. I'll call you.
I believe there's a Frank Romano in the chat.
Yes, he spoke already.
Yeah, he spoke.
Okay, I still don't have anybody, Chairman.
All right. Let's do a last call before we bring Mr. Tramarko back. Once we bring Mr. Tramarko back, no one else is going to be able to speak. So if you haven't spoken already and you would like to, please raise your hand and speak up.
All right, I have 2 hands raised. And I'm going to ask them to actually introduce themselves because their computer and their phones are not registered. So I have a CP Clark first, followed by iPad guest. So we'll start with CP Clark.
Okay. CP Clark?
They're raising their hand. I don't even see an audio here. They might be having difficulty. I'll call on the iPad person first. For the individual who doesn't have a microphone, or it looks like their camera.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Thank you. John Rigrod, 28 Sunken Meadow Road, Fort Salonga.
John, could you spell your last name, please, for the record?
R-I-G as in George, R-O-D as in David.
Are you CP Clark?
No, he was on the iPad.
Oh, you're on the iPad. Okay, I just want to get it correct. That's okay, John, go ahead.
Family has been here since 1960, and of course, a lot of the Fort Salonga looks the same, which is wonderful. I'm just wondering if that property were all developed, if it were flat and everybody could make use of all the land, what would the yield be with 27 acres, whatever it is. In other words, if it were a perfectly developable property, what would be the maximum amount of homes, counting the driveways or the roads at least, to access this property? The question would then be, because of the slopes, how much of that property is not buildable? So rather than questioning how many houses could go on a developable property, taking a certain amount of it and saying, you can't build here, it's too steep, what would the yield be left? Could you build 10 houses, 5 houses of 1 acre zoning, counting the road in to the property? In other words, what's the real use of that property if you could only use the developable land, understanding the slope would be prohibitive?
Okay. Anything else, John?
Well, the question is what's reality, the number of houses they want to put in, to what fairly under normal development would be allowed on that property, and the slopes would become natural anyway. Preservable because you couldn't build on them under today's rules. So how much land would be there anyway if you just did normal development of normal houses of normal size on 1 acre or more zoning?
All right. That's your question, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll get an answer for you as soon as Mr. Tramarko comes back. Do we have CP Clark?
Yes, and the audio is now working. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
This is Kieran Clark, 123 Sunken Meadow Road. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kieran?
Kieran, C-I-A-R-A-N, C-L-A-R-K, 123 Sunken Meadow. I just wanted to also say that I'm very concerned. One reason why I moved to Fort Salonga 10 years
Well,
ago.
I'm hearing something.
Yeah.
That's your question, correct?
No.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll get an answer for you as soon
There's like playback happening.
Yeah. I just want to affirm that I'm for the 1 acre zoning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I believe Peter and Sarah already spoke. I had his name down, but
I had another question, if I could. No. Would that be possible?
I'm just going to let Peter, no one else. Is everybody in agreement with that?
It's fast.
No.
All right, Peter, go ahead.
I just heard.
I'm sorry. Introduce yourself all over again.
Peter and Sarah, 19 Williamsburg Drive.
Spell your last name again.
INSERRA.
Thank you.
So right at the end of his presentation, Mr. Chikarico mentioned something about an environmental, some report at 4 o'clock that he got today. I was just wondering, is that the environmental report? You can comment on that. It wasn't clear what that was.
I believe it's a resource evaluation, Parks and Recreation, I believe.
So is that the report that we were waiting on? That
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
It just tells us the significance of the property, just like Sarah was getting into.
Right. Thank you.
Something has to be looked into. Okay. Anyone else who hasn't spoken?
Chairman, I don't have anybody else with their hands raised. There was somebody separate, but it's not pertaining to this application. There was a quick question that maybe Mr. Tramarko can answer from the Fort Salonga Association along with his responses. Is the property insurance going to be maintained on the existing home, and who is responsible for this?
Yeah,
That's all I have.
Pete asked that question.
Okay.
Maintenance of the existing house, who's going to do it and for how long? Okay, let's bring Mr. Tramarko back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not only myself, but our engineer and one of the developers, Rich Ralph, has been listening. And we're all taking notes as to the concerns of the people in Fort Salonga, which is certainly paramount to our moving forward. I guess I'll answer the questions as best I can, not in order, but I don't want to forget, Ryan Hill indicated that I said the lots that are going to be developed are half acre. If I did, I misspoke. The planning department via Allison Murray, there's an average lot of the new lots about 2/3 of an acre, not a half acre. So if I said half acre, I misspoke. So I wanted to make sure I answered that question. With respect to being near York Place and the houses that we are building in lots 9 and 8.
Oh, wait, Mr. Tramarko, when you turn away, I can't hear you.
With respect to the lots that back up to York Place, there is a fair amount of trees and foliage in the back. And there's also, if you look at the map, there's a squiggly line that goes around basically the whole property, and that's a buffer. So we're not going to cut down trees. First of all, we have to give a tree clearing plan into the town, and the town tells us what we can clear and what we can't. Not to mention the fact that it's not even economical just to knock down trees.
Mr. Tramarko, how large is that buffer?
50. Well, it varies. If you look at the squiggly line, you know, it goes all around from, you know, the doctor's side on the left side. And there, the buffer that is shown is about 50 feet, but the houses themselves in the building envelope are 100 feet from the property line. So basically you can't build in the buffer, which is 50 feet. Then there's space and then the house. So if you want to talk about how far away from the line on the left side, they're about 100 feet. So I guess it's a misconception that along that side, they're only 50 feet. And if you start to go up the hill and you look at the left side, the buffer gets larger, it goes around and comes down again. So we tried as best we could to make it as private as we could. With respect to the concerns about water, every subdivision is required by Smithtown Engineering Department and Smithtown law to contain its own water. You recall that Blaise Donadio was talking about how big that sump is. I'm not sure that engineering would say they would like a smaller sump or a different way to control the water. But all the water on the property is controlled either by that large sump, which is connected to catch basins going down the road. If some other method is required, we can do that. Or drain off from the properties, the roofs, from the gutters and the leaders. They go into small pools that are built on each house. I think you can see it on the map. They show drainage pools. So as far as water goes, the engineering department is very cautious about how you control the water, and usually engineering overbuilds or requires the client to overbuild on that on any subdivision. With respect to the concern or the question, I think it was Mr. and Sarah, about what you could build if we just looked at the property and the property in its state, taking into account all the steep slopes, we probably could build 2 or 3 houses at the most. And that's also stated, it was stated by, I think it was Allison, who was interviewed by Newsday and gave that report. The yield is no different than if it were 1 acre zoning. I thought I tried to make that clear. If the property yields, the property does yield the amount of houses that we're building, and it yields it on 1 acre. The reason why it's clustered is because it makes a much better application and leaves a tremendous amount of property to be given to the town. So that suggestion, by the way, was made by the planning department in the town. We had many meetings with planning to work out this particular layout of the subdivision. So the yield goes by the yield. When you do a cluster, they don't give you more houses than you could have gotten with a regular R43 subdivision. The reason why we're before your board, obviously, is the planning board does not have the power to grant the variance from the steep slopes. But as this board well knows, myself and probably most developers in Fort Salonga had to get steep slope variances, obviously because of the terrain of the property. So that's not a something that's abnormal. I understand what Mr. Hill is saying. Yeah, they're all 1 acre, and we could do 1 acre, but it really doesn't make sense. We would still be asking, albeit for a steep slope variance, because we couldn't do much without it. On the other hand, basically, it's always been a matter of course that the board would look at it and say, balancing of the equities here, as long as we provide for sufficient engineering, the better subdivision would be a clustering subdivision, and basically I think that's why we even have clustering laws. So with that, I think that you know, our company, we tried to do our best within the parameters of what planning had suggested to us. And if you really think about it, with the conservation areas, the number 1 and number 2, and the 5 acres with the historic house, and then the buffer areas around, you're almost doing half the property that'll never be built on or improved, even on the individual houses with swimming pools or anything else. So that's why we think it's a great compromise, and it's not going to make Fort Salonga any different. This will be tucked away with 1 road going up, and the houses, as you can see on the map, being built around the road and the cul-de-sac. And finally, we left 5 acres with the house. The question was, who is going to pay for the house? Well, eventually the house will be sold to a buyer who certainly, like any other buyer, will maintain his property. In the interim, the estate house is insured by my client. My client has done ordinary maintenance on the house since they bought the property. And we felt again that 5 acres was commensurate with the whole idea of it being an historic house, and commensurate with the size and and the design of the house. So given all of that, we ask the board, who only has to decide respectfully one thing, and that's the steep slope variance. You're not, required, nor have we asked for any other variances. Those other variances of lot size and so forth are the purview of the planning board, as is getting to what Sarah Couts, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, brought up about the historic area and all the historic significance. We are going to look into that letter from the Parks Commission, and there is a person named at the bottom of the letter who will take phone calls and so forth, and we'll be speaking with her in order to determine what ideas the state has with respect to our development. And if the planning board decides that the planning board wishes to have a full-blown environmental, it is in their purview to do so, and obviously we will comply. Again, they have to decide that, and with that, I'll end my presentation and say goodnight. Oh, I can't. I have another case. So, all right.
Mr. Chabarko, just one other question. I'm not sure if it was Ryan. Somebody, I think, asked a question about the workforce housing being flag lots.
Yes, they are flag lots. If you look at the map, you can see basically you come in with one driveway, and then you have the first house, number 17, lot 17, and lot 18. Lot 17 is...
Mr. Chabarko, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Lot 17 is approximately 18,000 square feet. Lot 18 is 21,000. There have been flag lots approved in the town. I would say the ones that we have done over the years, maybe 10 or 12. There's not an awful lot of them around. I understand that. But in this situation, it makes for a perfect avenue for the developer to provide a housing pursuant to the law at an economical price.
All right, thank you. Could I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second,
Motion has been made to close the application. It's been seconded. All in favor?
aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Night.
Good night, Ed.
We have one more case, I
We have
believe.
one more case, Bill.
Oh, no, one more case, okay.
That,
All right, Blaze, go ahead.
okay. The next case on the agenda is case number 18449, CTU Properties of New York LLC, 64 Smithtown Boulevard, Smithtown. The location of the property, the southwest corner of Smithtown Boulevard and Shepherd Lane. The property is zoned NB. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 47 feet for a proposed first floor 77 square foot addition and a 1,824 square foot second floor addition. To reduce the minimum distance for a retaining wall to a lot line from 5 feet to 1 foot for wall A. To reduce the minimum distance, excuse me, for a retaining wall to a lot line from 5 feet to 1 foot for wall B. To permit environmentally sensitive land to be altered for slopes greater than 15%. To reduce the minimum parking from 28 to 23 spaces. To reduce the minimum truck loading spaces from 1 to 0. to reduce the front yard parking setback from 6 feet to 1 foot on Shepherd Lane, to reduce the rear yard parking setback from 6 feet to 5 feet, to reduce the minimum driveway access within parking areas from 24 feet to 20 feet.
Good evening, Mr. Tramarko.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tramarko. I represent the applicant. We've submitted the affidavits posting and mailing to the planning department pursuant to your new regulations. I believe we presented this case a month and a half ago with respect to this application. And one of the things that happened was the planning department suggested, and they did advise me of their suggestion. You see the map that we proposed, and I think Matt probably has the other map proposed by the planning department. That's it. Okay. The problem with that plan is we don't believe the parking would be reduced even further than the request that we're asking for. Now, if you look at the gray area along Shepherd Lane, that whole property all the way to the back line is zoned NB. There is no difference between that piece and the other piece. My client acquired that strip of land with the intention of gaining more parking and, of course, having more area to build an extension on the building. They're accountants, and at times they become very busy, and they feel they need the parking. The thing that I would suggest to the Board of Zoning Appeals is we certainly, if you look at our rendition, our site plan, if the Board of Zoning Appeals, if this board, we'd like to use our site plan with our parking. However, we could also install a 6-foot fence made of whatever material the board felt or the Board of Site Plan Review would want, in accordance with the zoning provisions. Additionally, although there isn't a lot of space between the property line and our parking spaces that butt up to Shepherd Lane, there is a fair amount of space between our property line and the curb line. And in discussing this with my client would be willing to plant whatever plantings the board would desire to further camouflage Shepherd, to camouflage the building from Shepherd Lane, as well as doing plantings in the back. I know there was a neighbor that was concerned about removing the foliage. You can see there are some substantial trees, but again, it's zone neighborhood business. It's not that we're asking to extend parking into a residential zone. This is what it's zoned for. But we understand, on the other hand, the neighbor's concerns. So we would be willing, again, to put up fencing and to put up and to plant whatever plantings the board would see fit to camouflage the parking. As you know, evergreens grow quite rapidly, and you wouldn't see the parking slots there probably even within the first year. So that's why we're asking the board to allow our site plan to prevail in this case. Otherwise, it kind of defeats our purpose of making sure there are sufficient parking and there's nobody parking on Smithtown Boulevard, or for that matter, Shepherd Lane, which I think would make a worse situation than to make the parking less by using the planning board's planning department's suggestion. So again, we asked the board for its favorable consideration. We don't feel that our proposal would produce an impact on adjacent properties, given the fact as to how we would design and install a fence and shrubbery. It's not substantial, given the fact as, again, how we would sort of buffer and camouflage the parking from Shepherd Lane. It really can't be achieved by any alternative. If the board decides it wanted to go with planning department's recommendation, we would just have less parking, and we think would ultimately we'd be coming back to the board again and saying, look, it's just not working. There is no adverse effect on the environment. Obviously, we would have to pave the parking lot, put in suitable drainage, and the whole series of permits with engineering and so forth. Was the difficulty self-created or created by the applicant? Actually, we tried to alleviate a problem that existed before, when I believe it was a law office, where there really wasn't a lot of parking, and there wasn't actually a lot of room in the building. So that's why my clients purchased the other piece. It's going to make good use of that strip of land. And of course, the taxes will increase by virtue of the new addition and the additional parking. So again, we ask the board for its favorable consideration. Thank you.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Thank you.
No? Planning?
So I'd like to address what Mr. Tremarco said regarding the parking. The last time we had a hearing, we did show the board our plan that we did come up with. It did provide less parking than what the applicant was asking for, which would have caused a situation where the applicant would have had to come back and ask for another variance. So we went back to the drawing board and we took a look at the property and we tried to figure out a way where we could provide 23 spaces and at the same time also preserve a portion of the existing trees and vegetation that are on the northwest corner of the property. So Matt, if you would go to the other site plan, we came up with an alternative to our original plan that would actually give Mr. Tremarco's client 23 spaces and also preserve some of the existing trees and vegetation. Waiting for Matt to bring up the site plan because I would like you to take a look at it as I speak. Here we go. So as you can see, we are going into the existing buffer and we're creating more parking. However, we're giving Mr. Tremarco's client 23 spaces. We are preserving approximately 25 feet of existing trees and vegetation to the north for the neighbor that lives to the north in the single-family residence, and also for the other people who are on Shepherd Lane. They have some kind of a buffer where they're not looking at the complete side of the building and all of the parking because the entire property was cleared. I do want to point out a couple of items though, because this also did come up when we went back and we reviewed the proposal. Basically, they're proposing to put the parking, for argument's sake, right on the property line. That causes an issue for one big problem. If you take a look at the site plan, you can see that there are a number of mature trees on town property. that property that is west of the applicant's property boundary is all part of the town right-of-way for Shepherd Lane. Should the applicant be approved to a parking setback of 1 foot, in excavating the property in order to build the retaining wall to construct the parking, they are going to damage the root system to a number of the existing mature trees, which is going to, in fact, kill them, which would require them to be removed. So number one, we have an issue of the applicant having to come to the town and asking permission to remove trees from town property. The second issue that we encountered, and we're not 100% sure on this, and I might ask Mr. Tremarco if he could have the architect or the landscaper or the surveyor, whoever did the site plan, if they could calculate the actual existing landscaping on the applicant's property, because should they completely wipe out the existing trees and vegetation on the property now, they might not meet their minimum landscape requirement for the property. As far as the 6-foot fence goes, that causes another issue, because if you're going to have a retaining wall and you're going to put a fence on top of the retaining wall, that's going to require another variance. So this is, in our opinion, a better alternative to what the client put on paper. We're still preserving some vegetation and some trees, and the applicant is still getting the amount of parking that they asked for to begin with. They're getting their 23 spaces. So we'd like the board to consider this alternative to what the applicant is requesting.
With the alternative, are they going to need additional variances?
Depending upon whether or not they wish to pursue installing the fence on top of the retaining wall, they would. If you approve the parking to a setback of 1 foot, there's no need for them to come back for a parking setback. However, again, as I mentioned earlier, one of the big issues with the parking setback being so close to the trees on the town property, it causes an issue where those trees could potentially be damaged and may have to be removed.
Could I speak, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly, go right ahead.
It would have been nice if I had this this afternoon. I could have, brought it to my client. I certainly have no problem, speaking to my client about it tomorrow. I think the retaining wall issue, well, there's two things. One, the retaining wall could be 2 feet and the fence could be 4 feet, and we don't need a variance, I don't think. So, that issue could be resolved. The only thing that my client did say to me, and I seem to remember this, that the parking right in front of the door doesn't seem to be something that they think is, I don't know, they're not amenable to it. But I mean, push comes to shove, we got the parking, and that's a good thing. And I'm sure the planning department worked hard on it. As far as, digging up town trees or breaking the roots, I guess if that happened, we'd be responsible, for those trees. So, and finally, that little space where the dumpster is and preserve existing, I guess, what is that, like 3 spaces, and you made them up somewhere else? I don't know. To me, it seems like, well, anyway, I could talk to my client about it, and I'm sure Blaze can send that.
All right. So what we'll do is we'll keep it open. How is April 27th?
That's fine.
Okay. We'll keep it open. You can come back April 27th and let us know. Now, I'd like to see if there's people waiting to speak on the case, Mr. Tremarco. They've been here for quite a while, so it's only right that they could speak now and then come back on the 27th and also speak. So
Okay.
is there anyone
Whatever
out
you
there?
say.
Anyone out there, Nicole, that would like to speak on this?
Yes, I have three individuals. First is Calypso Prioso.
Hi, good evening. It's Prios. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, could you
hello?
state your name, spell your last name, and give your address, please?
Sure. Calypso Prios, K-A-L-I-P-S-O, and Prios is P-R-O-I-O-S. I live at 80 Shepherd Lane, directly adjacent to this property in question.
Okay.
Okay, so I am obviously extremely concerned as I've been a Smithtown resident for 20 years, and I bought my current home in August of 2019. And one of the primary reasons I bought this home is because of the privacy. I have a residential home next door to me on my right when you're facing the street, and it was a commercial property on my left, but it didn't seem to have a lot of action, so to speak. You know, it was very quiet. I have two sons, a 10-year-old and a 21-year-old autistic son who's also a little person. He has achondroplasia. And my son, you know, likes to go outside and run up and down our long driveway. And I've never had a concern about his safety, but I'm extremely concerned that if this property has more parking, that is closer to the property line, closer to the, you know, the street, that when my son is up and down the driveway, one, he's a little person, people can't always see him. His height is, you know, he's small. And two, you know, the idea of that being so close to the property concerns me. Change is also a big deal. We do have those trees that are a buffer, and it's, you know, it adds beauty to the property, but it also adds privacy and safety. And I feel if those trees are removed, it's going to affect my son greatly. I'm going to be more concerned. And I'm really concerned about this happening so close to my property line. I mean, I bought the home primarily, like I said, because of the privacy, because of my long driveway, and the idea of access to that property from Shepherd Lane is very concerning to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Next, I have just one name, Stefano. I'll ask them to say their full name and spell it.
Certainly. Hello?
They're still muted. Hang on a sec. Give them a second. There you go.
Hello. Hi, my name is Anita DeStefano. I'm at 93 Shepherd Lane, across the street from the lot.
Excuse me, could you state your name, spell your last name, and give your address, please, for the record?
Anita DeStefano, A-N-I-T-A, D-I-S-T-E-F-A-N-O, at 93 Shepherd Lane.
Okay, thank you, Anita.
Hello.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I just had a question. Yes, my question is, I'm concerned about the traffic, obviously, and that with a fence and a retaining wall, it's a very dangerous corner, as my neighbor was pointing out, with kids on the street. If that's going to block the view as cars whip around our corner from Smithtown Boulevard onto Shepherd Lane. And the other thing also is, I think it's really adversely would affect our block if the parking, you know, is exceeded, especially to the 1 foot line. But as the attorney pointed out, he thought that it wasn't a great idea to have parking directly in front of the building, yet he feels it's okay that for parking to be, you know, overloaded onto Shepherd Lane. So I don't think that that's really, you know, a good idea. But I'm very concerned with the traffic and the blocking of the view whipping around onto our corner, because it's already a very dangerous situation.
Okay.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
And I have one more, Joyce Sawyer.
Hang on one
Ooh. Hello, Joy?
Hello?
Yes, how are you?
Hi, sorry.
Could you state your name, spell your last name, and give the address for the record, please?
It's Joy Sauer, S like Sam, A-U-E-R, 82 Shepherd Lane.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, you know, I've been a Smithtown resident for 40 years. I guess my first thing is more of a statement than a question. But in the last meeting, Mr. Trimarco mentioned that most of the staff work off-site. And so, you know, if they're mostly off-site, I don't really understand the purpose of increasing the building size to a 2-story. And I'm just concerned with Smithtown and Suffolk being built up too much, looking like Nassau. You know, there's plenty of empty large buildings around that one could move to if a bigger size is needed. So that's just like my first point. And then just to kind of echo what my neighbors have said, you know, with the traffic concern, because years ago, then legislator Kennedy wanted to create a traffic circle in the area, and a traffic survey was conducted. And, you know, we talked last time about the data being considered for this project where you guys are presuming to increase traffic. You know, the road is curved, it's dipped. Our road is used a lot for a cut through too. So there's like already increased traffic. Sorry, when you turn onto Shepherd Lane, it is very deceiving. And, you know, I would hope that people would come out and actually try turning onto our block. You know, there's 3 streets that intersect Smithtown Boulevard and a 7-Eleven, and this is all within approximately 300 feet. Okay, so you have 3 blocks coming into Smithtown Boulevard and 7-Eleven, and now you're proposing adding in even more traffic, you know, to this little area, and you know, it's very concerning. You know, a young boy was injured very badly on a bike accident years ago crossing Smithtown Boulevard. So I just think that increasing the traffic in this area is extremely dangerous. That's the biggest point I have. But then, sorry, I have more. So again, having it look like Nassau, it's just important to keep nature intact, and ripping out the trees, again, I don't feel like that's an improvement. But I'm concerned about this retaining wall being 1 foot off the curb. You know, the turn is tricky, as I've stated, and on an icy day, you could slide off the road and then off a retaining wall into a parking lot. So I just feel like that's, you know, very dangerous. 1 foot is not a lot of space. And I have to agree too that a 6-foot fence would obstruct the view while driving, you know, and kids are on their bikes so much. You know, if you put a fence at that corner, you're not going to be able to see. We already have one on the opposite corner, and it's difficult to see when kids are coming across, you know, flying down the boulevard on their bikes. And just another point about the retaining wall, the trees would have to be taken down. You know, those trees are very mature. And so I'm concerned if the town arborist is involved in okaying that, because I know that, you know, certain projects, if the town arborist comes out and says you can't remove those trees, you cannot. So that's a concern. And I was glad to hear the planning board mention something to that effect earlier. So if they do have to take those trees down for this retaining wall, and they will, you know, for a retaining wall, you have to dig out and those trees will be killed. So I just, you know, I want to make sure that the town arborist is involved. And if they pull out those trees, you know, and they're saying they're going to replace them, you know, how are you going to put a mature tree in a 1 foot section? You know, it's not going to be comparable. And then my neighbor has a concern too about the invasive vines that grow, you know, that if the owner is then going to be responsible for taking care of those invasive vines and maintaining the property. And I think that is all. I'm sorry, I had a lot, but I think that's all I have.
Okay. Now you understand we're going to keep the case open. So we're going to rehear it again. Mr. Trimarco is going to talk to his client. He'll come back with a final answer on April 27th.
Can I ask, you know, because last time we had the meeting, we waited 2.5 hours, and tonight we also waited close to 2.5 hours. Is there any way for ours to be more towards the front of the meeting.
Everybody would love that.
I mean, it's been out 5 hours. That's a lot of time, sir.
Yeah, I know, and I apologize for that. But the cases that are adjourned or postponed usually go to the back.
Is there an agenda?
Maybe what you could do on the 27th, call the planning department, kind of get an idea of how long the other cases are going to be. This way you don't have to be holding so long.
Right.
I mean, tonight was an unusual night because we had the Fort Salonga people. If we didn't have the Fort Salonga people, we would have been done a while ago.
Yeah, no, that took a long time, and I kind of wish we were before them.
Yeah, I apologize for that, but not much we could do. Like I said, call the planning office the day of, and maybe they can give you a better idea, when you can, log in.
Okay, and
6 o'clock, it might be 7 or 7:30.
And just, I guess I kind of wanted an answer as far as the arborist, if the town arborist is involved and in taking down those trees. And as you said, it is the right of way. It is the town's property.
Right. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I'll ask and we'll find out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. All right, Mr. Tramarko?
I'm in. I'm good.
See you on the 27th.
Okay, thank you. I
Okay.
think the lady had a great idea though, Mr. Chairman, about putting our cases first. That was a great idea. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
And that concludes our meeting for tonight.